The setting: the seas of India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The target: a dummy oil rig. The executors: Indian Navy's Marine Commandos, better known as Marcos. They fast rope down the chopper and land in a waiting dinghy. These elite commandos then get down to business. Trapping the dummy oil rig. In a matter of minutes, the oil rig is blown to smithereens. And the Marcos are safely extracted from the site. This is just a glimpse of the kind of complex and daring operations the Indian Navy trains in to keep India's territorial waters secure and maintain the sanctity of international waters. The Andaman and Nicobar Command is the first and only tri-services theatre command of the Indian Armed Forces. Set up in 2001, this command has been protecting India's strategic interests in the Southeast Asian region. In addition to managing India's engagement with regional navies of Southeast Asia, the Andaman and Nicobar Command conducts coordinated patrols and maritime exercises with many rim countries in the region. This Tri-Services Command also patrols India's exclusive economic zone to tackle drug smuggling, piracy, gun running, and poaching. Conducting maritime surveillance, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief are also part of its primary mandate. No wonder then that it is this command that hosts the Biennial Multilateral Naval exercise called Milan with other friendly navies in the region.
This command was created in 2001.
Right.
17 years have elapsed, and this is the only unified command of our armed forces. Many times it's also referred to as Joint Command.
Right.
The interesting part, it is also a theatre command. So in this theatre, we have Army, Navy, Air Force, and also Coast Guard.
Right.
We are all integrated together in a single entity under the SINCAN. That is my job here. There can be very large navies with aircraft carrier, big aircraft, etc., etc., submarines.
Right.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are navies with patrol craft, smaller vessels.
Absolutely.
Their expectations are different. Milan, in fact, is a exercise which brings all together, and the enthusiasm which we find, particularly with our smaller navies and smaller partners in participating with Milan, with their assets, is very substantial, and I'm usually heartened by that aspect.
Milan was envisaged as an initiative to create a forum for littoral navies of the Southeast Asian region to exchange experiences and best practices in maritime cooperation, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief. When it started in 1995, Milan saw participation from 4 foreign navies: Indonesia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Since then, the event has been held every 2 years except in 2001, 2005, and 2016. This year's Milan was the 10th edition of this multilateral naval exercise. 17 countries, including India, participated this time, and as many as 11 foreign warships along with 9 warships of the Indian Navy engaged in complex exercises on the high seas. Warships from Australia, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Thailand were a part of this year's Milan. India had invited as many as 23 countries to participate in this year's edition of Milan. Only 16 of them responded and actually sent in their ships to participate in this multilateral naval exercise at Port Blair. But that did not act as a dampener. The enthusiasm amongst the participants was palpable. For them, it was not just an opportunity to get to know each other, but it was also a chance to know how they operate and also iron out all the issues that may arise when they actually meet at the high seas someday in a crisis situation. Milan is an effective platform for social, cultural, and professional interaction and for promoting camaraderie too. But Milan's real essence lies in promoting maritime cooperation and interoperability during humanitarian missions.
Commander Adnan from the Royal Navy of Oman. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's a good opportunity. Milan 18 is my first participation in this exercise and this gathering, and on the international level it's a big event, okay, for the South Pacific, Asia Pacific navies to participate.
Right.
Lots of main themes in the event. The seminar of In Pursuit of Maritime Good Order was a very good event. Lots of discussions, interruptions between the delegates from the different navies, the ships which participated with the ships officers and teams in the tabletop exercises. Okay, so learned a lot from that as well. Great deal of knowledge. Okay, have been great deal of knowledge learned from at all levels.
From a professional sense, it's the ability to connect with those who care around delivering professionalism at sea, and more importantly around humanitarian and disaster relief, of which we're all concerned. So it's a highly extraordinary, rewarding environment, and from New Zealand it's a long way to come, and I enjoy it. It's fun. The ability to understand that we have common problems, common issues, but we all have a common cause, that is to work together in friendship despite our barriers politically, economically, languages. We are all professional mariners. So first and foremost, it's that trust, and around trust we build relationships and our operations together.
It was about bonhomie. It was also about camaraderie. But most importantly, Milan 2018 was about learning from each other's experiences, recognizing each other's strengths and limitations, and laying down a basic standard operating procedure for all the participating navies. The greatest takeaway these 17 navies will take back from Milan would be the learning which will hold them in good stead on a day when their ships actually end up meeting at the high seas in a crisis situation. It could be a humanitarian aid effort, it could be a disaster relief operation, or an anti-piracy operation. The Chinese Navy started deploying its vessels in the Indian Ocean in 2008. It began with the deployment of an anti-piracy escort force which had a destroyer, a couple of frigates and a tanker. Since 2013, the Chinese have begun to deploy submarines in the Indian Ocean region too. But more importantly, the Chinese have also started sending in hydrographic ships and survey crafts. According to India's Navy Chief Sunil Lamba, there are about 6 to 8 PLA Navy ships deployed in the Indian Ocean region at any given time now. But the Indian Navy maintains that the upper hand in force levels deployed in the Indian Ocean rests with the Indian Navy. The Navy Chief also says that his forces perceive no problem or threat in the Indian Ocean region. India ensures freedom of navigation, and the Indian Navy has its own deployment strategy for mission-based deployments of ships on patrol round the clock. The Indian Navy keeps the northern part of the Indian Ocean under surveillance and has fairly accurate maritime domain awareness. In fact, the Indian Navy Chief is on record as saying that the sea lines of communications which crisscross the Indian Ocean region and upon which the whole world is dependent are safe and secure because of the deployments and safety provided by the Indian Navy.
You have to view the Indian Ocean region as an ocean which is almost 4,000 nautical miles from China. And what is the deployable force levels which can be put by the Chinese Navy in Indian Ocean. The balance of power and favorably rests in our favor in the Indian Ocean region. We are the largest navy in the region and I don't foresee any threat.
China's growing influence in the Indian Ocean region is a concern not just for the Indian Navy, but also for several other countries dotting the Southeast Asian region. The manner in which China is asserting itself in the Indian Ocean region is a subject which is being talked about by all the navies attending this year's Milan exercise. Though China is not present in this exercise, the discourse here is largely dominated by the ever-increasing Chinese influence, a cohesive three-dimensional force, Indian Navy is capable of operating above, on and under the surface of the oceans, efficiently safeguarding India's national interests. INS Sahyadri, or the F-49, is a Shivalik-class stealth multi-role warship of the Indian Navy. It is one of India's main frontline warships and has capabilities any navy would be envious of. Built at the Mazagon Dock Limited in Mumbai, INS Sahyadri was commissioned into the Indian Navy's Eastern Naval Command in 2012. At this year's Milan exercise, INS Sahyadri was one of the Indian Navy's most potent warships on display. In fact, it is INS Sahyadri which was the lead ship of the final high seas exercise of Milan 2018. WION went on board the INS Sahyadri and examined the stealth frigate from close quarters to grasp just how capable this fighting machine is.
a frontline warship of the Eastern Fleet. It is a stealth frigate, and with all pride and humility, I would like to say that it is indigenously constructed by our very own shipyard, Mazagon Docks Limited. As the name would tell you, a stealth frigate means that it is a very potent platform. It has all the capabilities to take on an adversary in all the three dimensions, whether it is surface, air or subsurface.
Right.
So in effect, we have missiles which are capable of taking an air target. We have sonar and underwater sensors as well as weapons to take on a submarine and also to take on an enemy surface warship. As the name and the term specifies, stealth in term means that you are able to hide yourself, and you would appreciate that any warship can be detected in three manners. One is by the acoustic signature, second is by the heat signature, and lastly it is by the radar signature. On all these three fronts, with respect to the design, the way machinery is fitted on board, and the way the acoustic signature has been reduced on board, it is difficult for an adversary ship to pick me up so easily. So that's why it's a stealth frigate, and the only three of its kind in the Navy.
The Indian Navy has 3 commands, each led by a flag officer commanding-in-chief. The Western Naval Command is headquartered in Mumbai. The Eastern Naval Command is based in Visakhapatnam, and the Southern Naval Command is at home in Kochi. While the Western and the Eastern Naval Commands are operational commands, which exercise control over the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal respectively, the Southern Command is a training command. WION caught up with the flag officer commanding Eastern Fleet, Dinesh Tripathi, on board the INS Sahyadri.
As you know, the Milan series of exercises is an initiative which was started in 1995, and this is the 10th edition. This has served us really well to build trust among the regional navies, enhance interoperability, and basically sort out the basic level communication issues wherein when the navies of these regions meet at sea, they are able to conduct the operations smoothly.
Right.
And I would say it has been a great success. It is a forum for carrying out basic maneuvers, basic gun refirings and other maritime operations at sea. There is no question of display of any might. This is an initiative to build bridges of friendship, enhance collaboration, and to arrive at a situation where the combined strength, combined good of all the navies is put to good use for everybody in the region.
A navy is not just about warships. It is also about the supporting infrastructure that ensures that those warships are in fit and fighting condition at all times. And Indian Navy is alive to those needs. Conducting regular service checks and repairs on ships is no easy task. And it becomes even more challenging if the ship has to be inspected at a floating dock anchored at sea. Indian Navy's capabilities to execute these service checks and repairs on ships while they are afloat is set to get a massive boost with the commissioning of FDN-2, the second floating dock that will soon be a part of Indian Navy's fleet.
Some ships have larger draft, that is larger underwater area, so we go to a larger depth, but the maximum depth is around 30 meters. Like a car goes for servicing, a ship has an operational cycle in which it comes for refits. So probably after some years of service, for 6 months it is docked, so the routine repairs also happen. Now what are the kind of repairs? Anything related to underwater machinery, can be to do with the propellers, the shafting, the hull as such, paint work, repair of steel cutting area, anything can be a part of the underwater repair package.
And this FDN can take care of all classes of Indian ships?
Almost all classes of the Indian Navy ships.
And submarines too?
Almost all submarines, yes.
It has the capability to repair submarines too. So this would be a major asset as far as the Indian Navy is concerned once it is inducted.
It's a highly resourceful asset. As I said, we can take in almost all classes of the Indian naval ships. So not only it will be a resourceful asset for the Andaman Nicobar Command, but for the entire Indian Navy.
As Milan neared its conclusion, and just before the warships finally headed into the high seas for the real action, Port Blair witnessed a glorious international city parade. Showcasing the motto of friendship across the seas, marine commandos, para-jumpers, marching contingents, and cultural troops enthralled the audience. Across the backdrop of the historic Ross Island and offset by the pristine blue of the Andaman Sea, the Indian Navy and Coast Guard demonstrated a search and rescue operation involving Chetak helicopters. And even as the daredevil display by motorcyclists from the Indian Army left the audience enthralled, the Marine Commandos of the Indian Navy jumped from a Dornier aircraft for a combat freefall to showcase their skydiving skills. Lieutenant Governor of the Andaman and Nicobar administration and former Navy Chief Admiral D.K. Joshi reviewed the parade as smartly turned out contingents of the armed forces and the Coast Guard marched to the tunes of military bands. The showstopper, however, was the continuity drill of the Indian Navy and the precise maneuvers of the Air Warrior drill team. Keeping the high seas and oceans safe and secure is no mean task, and the brave hearts of the Indian Navy know it only too well how to do it on a day-to-day basis. The Indian Navy has been at the forefront of maintaining peace and tranquility in the Indian Ocean region and has been a potent force against any mischief makers. The Indian Navy has also been doing active operations to support neighboring countries whenever they have required assistance or help from India, be it anti-piracy operations, humanitarian assistance or disaster relief. Indian Navy has proven its mettle time and again. From providing deterrence against war or invasion to decisive military victory in case of conflict, the Indian Navy's primary role is to secure India's territorial integrity, protect India's citizens and offshore assets from seaborne threats, safeguard India's maritime trade, and guard India's national interests. And that's exactly what these men in white have been doing unflinchingly, day in and day out.